Be sure to pre-order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion as he takes you through the ins and outs of the most explosive offense and most exciting offense in college football. You can find it on our website at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Football Game Plan, where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Mike McCarthy is your producer today. It's the summertime and preseason is just around the corner in the NFL, and we'll get you ready for the upcoming 2019 NFL season as we preview the Minnesota Vikings. Now, as we kick off the season preview, let us take a look at some of the key storylines heading into the season as we go into our 4-minute offense.
In Minnesota, running back Dalvin Cook is the clear starter in the backfield. He's known for his special athleticism and breakaway speed. Unfortunately, he's also known for his injuries, as he's only played in 15 of a possible 32 games as a pro. He ran for 615 yards and 2 touchdowns last season, and he's looking to stay healthy in 2019. If he can do so, I'm expecting him to get over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns so that the offense will be more balanced. In his first year in Minnesota, quarterback Kirk Cousins had relative success in 2018. He completed 70% of his passes for 4,298 yards and 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And they'll look to improve their offense so they can have a chance to improve on their 8-7-1 record from last season. The Vikings have had one of the worst offensive lines in the league since 2014. According to Pro Football Focus, that season, the Vikings offensive line has averaged 23rd in the NFL and given up an average of 40.3 sacks. Last season's Super Bowl participants, the Patriots and the Rams, had offensive lines ranked 4th and 6th respectively. To fix this, the Vikings drafted Garrett Bradbury at center, which pushes Pat Elflein over to left guard. This should help bolster a unit looking to protect their quarterback better and run the ball more efficiently in 2019. Third down efficiency was one of the strengths of the Vikings defense in 2018. They ranked number 1 in the league, only letting up 30.5% of third down conversions. Most of their roster remains the same, with only a few new faces, one being Shamar Stephen, replacing Sheldon Richardson at defensive tackle. Last season, the defense ranked 4th overall, but they ranked 22nd against the run. If they can get a higher level of play from Stephen and the rest of the defensive line, expect the Vikings defense in 2019 to be a force to be reckoned with.
It's time to put this team under the microscope and go position by position to see where they stand as we head into the 2019 season, and we'll start on the offensive side of the ball at the quarterback position. I'm glad that Kirk Cousins acknowledged the fact that he's been playing mediocre football with regards to his career win-loss record, and that's usually what's needed before you can make changes. And with that said, Cousins has to play better situationally in order for the Vikings to go far. Statistically, he's been great, but situationally, I'm talking about third down offense, red zone offense, 4-minute offense, backed up offense. He's been mediocre, which is why the perception of him is what it is. He's the unquestioned starter here in Minnesota, and what they've done around him this offseason, it's time for him to get the job done. In the backfield, it all depends on if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy for a full 16-game season. If so, he'll easily cruise past 1,300 yards on the ground. He's that type of game breaker. Because of his inconsistent health, look for a bevy of backs to take some of the load off him this year. I like what I saw last year from Michael Boone and Rock Thomas. Both were undrafted free agents last year that made an impact, and both will compete with rookie third-round pick Alexander Madison out of Boise State for their RB2 role. Now, if Amir Abdullah has taken care of his fumbling issues, he actually has a more natural ability out the 4 reserve candidates. Minnesota has 2 of the better receivers in the game in Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. The Vikings duo combined for 215 receptions, nearly 2,400 yards, and 18 touchdowns. Both guys are as consistent as they come, and what hasn't been consistent is the Vikings' quest for a third receiver. Former first-round pick Laquan Treadwell may be on his last leg to prove that it could be him, but I would also keep an eye on undrafted rookie free agent Davion Davis out of Sam Houston State as one of those guys that could thrive. He's got game that's very similar to another former Minnesota Viking in Jarius Wright. Now, between Jeff Badette, Chad Beebe, and other rookies like Dylan Mitchell and BC Johnson, that battle for spots 3 through 7 will be a highly competitive one. Now, at tight end, they are in much better shape with Kyle Rudolph being extended, giving them a solid, dependable option at the position, and also with the drafting of Irv Smith Jr. out of Alabama in the second round. Rudolph and Smith should give the Vikings an excellent 1-2 punch at the position on both ends of offense. I also wouldn't count out second-year player Tyler Conklin out of Central Michigan and Cole Hicotini, who played at Louisville. Both guys are more of your flex options that can create mismatches in the passing game. Veteran David Morgan gives them yet another blocking option as well. Again, this is a very deep and talented group for Minnesota. Look for the offensive line to be vastly improved this season. I absolutely love the selection of Garrett Bradbury out of NC State. He was one of the more cleaner prospects in the draft class at the position and is an immediate starter up front. Now it looks as if it'll be at center as Pat Elflein will move over to left guard. Now the other guard spot, Josh Klein, looks to improve over last season with the Tennessee Titans, as he may have a rookie in Drew Samia out of Oklahoma breathing down his neck for that starting spot as well. Now Samia was one of my favorite prospects in the class at the position and was one of the excellent guard prospects in this draft class to come out of OU. Brian O'Neill played solid at tackle last year and gives him a solid start on the right side, and Riley Reeve gives him a Pro Bowl caliber player on the left side at the tackle spot. And I think depth here is strong with center Brett Jones, rookie Ali Udoh out of Elon, who had a fantastic Shrine game and Senior Bowl week, and Storm Norton at tackle, as well as Dakota Dozer. I think that is, again, a solid group of guys that you can bring in and out and rotate within your offensive front. Now here is how I graded out the Vikings offensive units. The Vikings are really good along the defensive line. They have excellent frontline starters and quality depth. Both defensive ends, Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin, can really affect the game with their ability to be disruptive on both ends of defense. On the inside, they bring back Shamar Stephen and team him up back with Linval Joseph, who's one of the better nose tackles in the game. And when they rotate, they turn to guys like Jaleel Johnson, defensive tackle, and Stephen Weatherly, defensive end. And he definitely raised some eyebrows this past season with his play. And they also get back Ade Aruna from Tulane, who was injured last year, and they bring in Carter Schultz from the Salt Lake City Stallions of the Lions of American Football, who's a sack leader in that league. So I like this defensive line for Minnesota. At linebackers, the Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks show both guys communicate really well, and it shows in how they operate on game day. Expect to see Barr used more as a rusher this year in addition to his regular duties, and for Kendricks to finally make a Pro Bowl as he's led the team in tackles the last 2 seasons. Now the depth is thin here, but that's by choice as the Vikings operate mostly in nickel, but there are some players here that can step in and play, like Eric Wilson and Ben Gideon. Now the secondary looks strong again this year with a healthy Xavier Rhodes and improved play from both Mackenzie Alexander and Trey Waynes. And speaking of healthy, Minnesota gets back last year's first-round pick Mike Hughes, who looked really good prior to tearing his ACL. Holton Hill was a pleasant surprise last year as an undrafted free agent, but Hill missed the first 4 games of this year because of a suspension, and that leaves the door open for rookie and fellow Longhorn Chris Boyd to make an impact. At safety, Harrison Smith is still one of the best in the league at his position and has a good running mate in Anthony Harris, who I thought played excellent last season. And I like the depth here as well with Jaron Kearse and bringing in Deron Smith, another player who starred in the Alliance of American Football this past winter, has the great ball skills and versatility to play back deep and shallow and also close to the line of scrimmage. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits in within this defense. And here's how I graded out the Vikings defensive units. What I like about the Minnesota Vikings receiving corps is that they have 2 guys that work really well with one another, and that's Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. They do a good job of running 2-man games, and I'm talking about certain situations in the passing game where these guys have a ton of success. So let's say in your play action passing game, which requires a little bit more timing base, and we'll get to motion timing, drop back passing game. But in the play action passing game, let's say you have Stephon Diggs on the inside, and you also have Adam Thielen right here. So more play action, you're going to run timing based guys that really understand coverage and zone coverage and things like that, that can find themselves open and settle down the zone. You want to take advantage of Diggs' speed. You send him deep down the field. Thielen works up and over. So they always understand spacing and timing, and that's why they tend to work well with one another if you put them on the same side. In your classic drop back passing game, where it's strictly how great can you run a route, because at the top of my drop, that ball's got to come out. So let's say you want to put Thielen here and also Diggs here. You want to run Thielen on your basic in route. He's a bigger receiver and does a good job of snapping out of that break and coming straight inside. Diggs, we know, can work up and does a great job of coming out of his break, working back downhill, toe tapping on the sideline. Both of these guys could either run either one of these routes, so it's nothing like this guy is better at this or that guy is better at that. But let's say we put these guys on in a motion where you want to stack them. So let's say Diggs here, and we're going to motion him short motion right behind Adam Thielen, and this is where you want him to you know, these guys are going to stack each other, and then at the certain yard mark they break in or break out. That's where I get the timing from. So you're going to have him run a post corner, and he's going to follow suit and run up, give that illusion that he's going to the out or to the flag, and he's going to break back inside. So I just wanted to draw this up because you see how when you have two receivers that are used to working well with one another, you do a great job of staying in a great position to receive the football, do something after the catch, and create space and opportunity for everyone else in the passing game. So I really like both Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and how they work well with one another in the passing game. The Minnesota Vikings were able to bring back Anthony Barr via free agency after he signed with the New York Jets for about a couple of hours and came back to Minnesota. But you like what he brings to the table because I think he can be utilized even more so as a pass rusher. And this is one simple way that I wanted to draw up for them to get pressure with Anthony Barr because, again, he's so athletic, so lengthy, and can cause a problem for a passing game if you allow him just to rush the passer. But you see what we have drawn up here, shotgun set, basic nickel defense, 4-2-5 or what have you. But when you look at Barr here lined up on that tight end, what we're going to do is crash him inside and in between that, you know, the C gap, I'm sorry, a B gap, because we're going to have this defensive end take a wider arc outside, hopefully influencing that tackle. Going to get double A gap pressure. I'm a big fan of double A gap pressure. Why? Because it can create a double team situation, contain on the outside, and this is an obvious one. You're going to loop him around and shoot right there because, again, because of his speed, quickness, explosiveness, athleticism, Anthony Barr could be a problem in the passing game. And I think this year for Minnesota, they want to make sure they unlock everything that he has at his disposal. He did a lot of different things at UCLA in college. Maybe that's why he was flirting with the idea of going to the Jets to be more of a pass rusher in Greg Williams' defense. But I think now, coming back to Minnesota, they're going to find ways to allow him to rush the passer, and this is one way they can do so out their nickel defense.
Kirk Cousins is the quarterback. We know how I feel about Kirk Cousins. From a fantasy football standpoint, he used to be really relevant. I think in this new system, they're going to run the ball more. I think that he is an effective quarterback to get, but you don't want to have Kirk Cousins as your starting quarterback. More slated towards a two-quarterback system or as your second quarterback, especially if he falls to that 14th or 15th round range. Dalvin Cook is the guy you want. Listen, I know he was injured, but I don't think he's injury prone. And if I usually do talent over injury if the talent transcends the injury. He suffered a major injury early on, the ACL tear. That's tough. Unlike Marlon Mack, where I don't think his talent outweighs his injury concerns because it's more nagging injuries, this guy's does. Dalvin Cook could end up with the offense they want to run. If he stays healthy all season, he'll be the #1 running back in fantasy football, even over Saquon Barkley, because they have a better offensive cast around him. And he doesn't have as much talent, but it's not too far off. He's a heck of a running back. I think he even has better vision than Saquon Barkley. It's just Saquon Barkley is a ridiculous beast of a running back. Alexander Madsen, right now listed as the #2 guy. If you have fear, just draft him because this offense is going to run the ball pretty heavy. It's going to be almost a 50-50 split, which in this new NFL is heavy. Receivers, we know about them. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs. Personally, I think Stephon Diggs is just a tick better than Adam Thielen as a real receiver, but from a fantasy football standpoint, I think Adam Thielen is a tick better than him. 6 one way, half a dozen. Pick the guy who falls further. That's the best advice I can give you. You'll probably be able to get Adam Thielen or Stephon Diggs in the 5th round. One of the two will be in the 5th round, which is actually pretty good considering. And then Kyle Rudolph. They paid him a pretty sizable amount of money, but they also drafted Irv Smith. I think that they might overutilize him as a run blocker because he is really talented and use Irv Smith as a flex to where it dilutes some of the numbers for Kyle Rudolph. So from a fantasy football perspective, if he's there in the 15th or 16th round, cool beans, take him. Otherwise, you can't touch him. Their defense, I like their defense season long. I actually do. But their start to their season is it's a little troublesome. Playing at home against Atlanta, then at Green Bay, and then home against an Oakland team who could actually put up some numbers. So you want to stay away from that. And the kicker, Dan Bailey, yeah, fine. Playing indoors, again, when you have a team that has offensive talent and they play indoors, you want to give them the opportunity.
Troy Anthony here, bringing you the best bets for the Minnesota Vikings. The win line for the Vikings starts off at 9 wins. I'm taking plus 100 on the under here. The Vikings have the 10th toughest schedule this season. Not only do they play in a tough division, they also have to see the AFC West this year. I don't see them pulling off another 3-2-1 division record. I do like their Week 1 matchup though. At minus 110, you can get the over 47.5 points with Atlanta. Both offenses can put up numbers. That's all for now. Troy Anthony here. Follow me on Twitter at FootballFandom, replacing the O's with zeros.
I'm David Hassagen, and this is Huddle Up with Hassagen. We're going to be firing off some quick-fire takes on the Minnesota Vikings. Let's start with this year's breakout candidates.
I'm going to go with Brian O'Neill, the offensive lineman coming out of Pitt. I think he has very good athleticism and has a chance to really grow in that role with the Vikings. Defensively, Mackenzie Alexander, very good slot corner. Love his aggressiveness. Like them coming out of Clemson. The light is finally starting to come on for him as a defensive back for the Vikings.
Who are the impact rookies out of this year's class?
Obviously, the first-round pick, Garrett Bradbury, is going to be a guy that's definitely going to have an impact. He was one of the best centers in college football on both ends of offense, so I think he's going to do a good job. And Chris Boyd, the later-round draft pick, the corner out of Texas, with Houghton Hill suspended for the first 4 games, here's an opportunity for him to make his impact known, or presence felt. I think he's going to be one of those rookies that, you were surprised that he fell so late. You thought he was going to be probably maybe a 4th or 5th round pick, but I think Boyd has a chance to really surprise.
Who are the X factors for Minnesota this season?
Kirk Cousins has to be one. When you talk about a guy that has played 500 footballs, 79 footballs at 8-8, he has to be the reason why this offense grows and this team gets into the playoffs. And I think the next factor on defense would be Mike Hughes. He was really starting to come into his own last year before he got injured. Ball skills, he drafted him in the first round. He can play outside, he can play inside. They get him back healthy now. He's going to be a big-time playmaker for him.
Who are going to be the surprises in camp for Minnesota?
I think wide receiver Davion Davis out of Sam Houston State, undrafted rookie free agent, dynamic playmaker, a lot of experience running routes in that Bearcat offense. Is going to fit in perfectly with Minnesota, who's still trying to find that 3rd or 4th receiver. Davis has a chance to surprise. And also on defense, I look at another undrafted free agent, Henry St. Amour out of Georgia Tech. Some people thought he was a little bit undersized at Georgia Tech, but he got stronger. He has good functional strength, good ability to rush the passer, has a chance to find a role as a situational pass rusher and special teamer for Minnesota.
What are your reasons for optimism and concern for Minnesota Vikings?
I think optimism, you love the defense. You love the fact that they get Dalvin Cook 2 years removed from the injury, so the running game should be better. The offensive line should be better. They got really good tight ends, Kyle Rudolph, Irv Smith Jr. I also like Tyler Conklin as well. So they have good options. They have 2 good receivers, arguably one of the best duos in the league in Adam Thielen and also Stephon Diggs. So cause for concern, Kirk Cousins. Once again, this was my concern last year, and I proved to be right because they missed the playoffs completely.
Right.
And if Kirk Cousins doesn't play like Kirk Cousins, if he transforms to somebody completely different and they get to the playoffs, perfect. But if not, if he plays like he's played his entire career, that's going to be a concern, and that's going to be another reason why the Vikings miss the playoffs. Emory Hunt Thazar, the Playbook here, and joining me now is fellow football game plan analyst Troy Anthony for this 4 Downs with Thazar segment containing our preview of the Minnesota Vikings. And as we take a look at the road to the Super Bowl for the Vikings, in order for them to get there, now keep in mind, this is 2019 season. So coming into the 2018 season, we were talking about a team that was 1 game away from the Super Bowl, and guess what happened? They went out and signed a guy who didn't lead his team to the playoffs, played 500 football for the Washington Redskins and Kirk Cousins, and ultimately was a big reason why they didn't end up making the playoffs last year. Not only not making the playoffs, but they didn't even get to the Super Bowl. So Cousins, in order for this to happen, he has to play un-Cousins-like, which means he has to be better situationally. 3rd down offense versus pressure. inside the red zone. I don't care what he does from the 20 to 20, in the first quarter of a game or the second quarter of a game. I'm more interested in Cousins in the third quarter, the fourth quarter, inside the red zone versus pressure. They know he's skittish. They know he tends to check the ball down and not want to take the sack. If he can play un-Cousins-like and play more like Case Keenum did in 2018 or 2017, I think that goes a long way in helping the Vikings get to the Super Bowl.
So we know that Cousins gets skittish and tries to check down the ball. Thielen was amazing for him last season when it came to that. But who I need to be amazing for him is Kyle Rudolph. He just signed this great deal for them, but yet he really hasn't produced in the past couple of seasons. When you talk about top tight ends in the game, his name gets thrown around, but he really hasn't produced that much the past couple of seasons. It's time for him to step up and be there for his team, be there for his quarterback, and help springboard them into the bonus in February.
Well, they may be stronger at tight end this year than ever before. Rudolph, if he can play up to your standards. They also drafted Irv Smith Jr., out of Alabama. They have Tyler Conklin, who I liked 2 years ago. They drafted out of Central Michigan, an athletic flex tight end. So they got depth at that position, which will help my guy, Dalvin Cook, get back to form. I think that right there is one of the biggest differences that they need to happen this year. If Dalvin Cook can return to form, be the explosive element out of the backfield and in the running game, that takes a ton of pressure off of Kirk Cousins. To me, Kirk Cousins throwing the football 25 to 30 times a game is not playing winning football, because that exposes him to pressure of the situation and also from the opposing defense. But if you're running the football with a home run hitter in Dalvin Cook, that takes pressure off Cousins. He can then operate off play action. And in the short to intermediate passing game, he can get the ball out to those catch and run guys like Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, into one of those mini tight ends. So I think Dalvin Cook returning to form, this will be his second year removed from the injury. I think we're going to see the Dalvin Cook we saw at Florida State this year for the Vikings. If that happens, that's going to be big news for their offense.
Yeah, I had that as well. They definitely need to develop a more consistent running game. I understand that Dalvin Cook got hurt. He only played 11 games. He had 615 yards. But Latavius Murray, who played 16 games, had 7 more carries than Murray and finished with almost 40 yards shorter than him. So, I don't understand how they give him the ball that many times and he still finishes short. It tells me that the running game wasn't really there, but Dalvin Cook, his athleticism,
right,
his explosiveness got him there. So the running game isn't that good. That's all on Cook. They need to develop a better running scheme maybe to help the running game in general. They finished 30 in rushing yards last season. If they can get that up a couple of notches, that's going to help get them into the postseason, maybe even further.
Well, that's why you bring in a Garrett Bradbury, the top center on my board, Football Game Plan Scouting, in the draft. He's going to start day one. And I think when you have a guy that's that dominant, that athletic, in the middle of your offense, I think what people don't understand mostly about the game is if your battery is strong, you're going to be great. You're talking about your center, your defensive tackle, your mic back, your free safety, your running back, your quarterback. If you're strong down the battery, you're going to be playing a lot of winning football. Getting Bradbury, I think, was huge for this offense, and getting Cook back healthy gives them some pieces on offense. And if Cousins can play un-Cousins-like, that helps out. We talked about their defense before, how good they are. Yeah. They're good down the middle. And if they can be good down the middle on offense with Cousins and Bradbury can live up to those standards, Vikings going to find themselves not only winning the North, but also playing in February. I have the Vikings finishing third in the NFC North. This team will be a lot like what we saw last year. Very good defense. The running game, I think, will be improved because of a healthy Dalvin Cook. But at the end of the day, it would all fall on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins and his ability to overcome the mediocre play within the situation. So if he can't do that, this team will finish where I have them predicted at third. But if he can, this team can definitely go to the Super Bowl. But I do have the Vikings finishing third in the NFC North. For the season preview, I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the Playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of our social media accounts. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to Football Game Plan Podcast on iTunes, where you can find our NFL All 32 podcasts, our fantasy football starting lineup, as well as our Scout Team podcast, and leave us a 5-star rating. Also, subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network, located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Finally, every Thursday and Friday evening at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, be sure to check out the Football Game Plan show on the Game Plus Network. Check with your cable provider for channel listings.